The studio lights felt hotter than usual that morning. The audience of The View buzzed with anticipation, sensing that something different was about to unfold. It was supposed to be a standard guest, appearance, another celebrity, promoting a project, exchanging polite laughs and leaving with applause. But the energy shifted the moment Denzel Washington walked onto the stage. He carried his usual calm presence, dressed sharply, his expression composed yet observant. As he greeted the hosts and took his seat, there was a subtle tension in the air. Joy Behar smiled. But it was the kind of smile that hinted at a conversation already, loaded with unspoken opinions. The interview began lightly. They talked about his latest film, his decades-long career and his impact on Hollywood. Denzel answered with his signature thoughtfulness, often pausing before speaking, choosing his words carefully. The audience nodded along, fully engaged. Then the conversation turned. Joy leaned forward slightly, her tone shifting from casual to pointed. She brought up a recent comment Denzel had made in an interview, something about personal responsibility and success. Her question wasn't just a question, it carried an edge. So, you really believe that everyone's situation is just about personal responsibility? She asked, raising an eyebrow. That sounds a bit dismissive of real struggles people face. The room quieted. Denzel didn't respond immediately. He looked at her for a moment, then leaned back slightly in his chair. His expression remained calm, but there was a noticeable firmness in his eyes now. I believe, he began slowly, that we all have choices. Not equal choices, maybe. Not easy choices, but choices nonetheless. Joy tilted her head, clearly unconvinced. That sounds nice, she said, but it's not reality for everyone. Some people don't have the same opportunities you had. A murmur rippled through the audience. Denzel leaned forward this time, his voice still controlled but carrying more weight. You don't know what opportunities I had, he replied. You see the result. You don't see the path. There was a brief pause. One of the other hosts tried to interject, sensing the rising tension, but Joy continued. I'm just saying, she pressed. It's easy to say those things when you've made it. It can come across as out of touch. That's when the shift became undeniable. Denzel's jaw tightened slightly. He didn't raise his voice immediately, but the intensity in his tone increased. Out of touch? He repeated. You think I don't understand struggle? The audience leaned in. I grew up seeing things most people in this room wouldn't last a day in, he continued. I've seen people give up when they had every reason to keep going, and I've seen people rise when everything was stacked against them. Joy crossed her arms lightly. But that doesn't mean everyone can just rise if they try hard enough. Now his voice lifted, not shouting, but powerful, filled with emotion. I didn't say it was easy, he said. I said it's possible. There's a difference. The room was completely silent now. Denzel stood up slightly from his seat. Not fully, but enough to emphasize his point. His presence dominated the stage. What bothers me, he continued, is when we tell people they're stuck. When we take away their belief that they can do more. That's dangerous. One of the hosts tried again to ease the tension. I think what Joy means is... No, Denzel interrupted, still controlled but clearly passionate. Let her say what she means. This is important. Joy, to her credit, didn't back down. What I mean is that systemic issues exist. You can't just ignore them and tell people it's all on them. Denzel nodded slightly, acknowledging her point but not conceding. I'm not ignoring anything, he said. I'm saying don't let those issues define you completely. If you do, you've already lost. There was a pause, heavier than anything before. The audience wasn't sure whether to clap or stay silent. Denzel took a breath, calming himself. He sat back down fully, adjusting his jacket. When he spoke again, his voice softened, but the conviction remained. I'm not angry, he said. I'm passionate. Because words matter. What we say to people matters. If we tell them they're victims with no way out, that's what they'll believe. Joy looked at him, her expression less combative now, more reflective. And if we ignore the barriers? She asked quietly. We don't ignore them, he replied. We acknowledge them and still push forward. For a moment, neither spoke. The tension that had filled the room began to shift into something else, something more thoughtful, more human. One of the co-hosts finally broke the silence with a light comment, trying to bring balance back to the conversation. A few nervous laughs came from the audience. But the moment had already happened. Denzel leaned back, calmer now, his earlier intensity fading into quiet confidence. Joy adjusted her notes, glancing at him briefly, then back at the table. The conversation moved on. But the energy never fully returned to what it had been before. Something real had been said. Something that couldn't be, wrapped up neatly in a TV segment. As the show went to commercial break, the audience erupted into applause, louder than usual. Not just for entertainment, but for honesty. Backstage, the atmosphere was different. Some crew members whispered about what had just happened. Others simply nodded as if they had witnessed something rare. Denzel stood quietly near the exit, speaking to a producer with the same calm demeanor he had when he arrived. There was no trace of anger now, only composure. Joy, on the other hand, sat for a moment longer at the table before standing up. She looked thoughtful, perhaps even a little shaken, not by confrontation, but by the weight of the discussion. When Denzel finally walked out of the studio, the bright lights fading behind him, he didn't look back. Because for him, it was never about winning an argument. It was about saying something that mattered.